All right, hell yeah. So I have to make some headway on this platform. And you know what I mean? And I have to be confident in my decision to make this such kind of like a narrow cockpit. I was trying to reduce this to 18, even though, you know what I mean? The boat is still pretty close to like full width of almost 5 feet. But I figured if you wanted a smaller boat, hey, this cockpit also has to shrink. And so even just throwing in this pillow right here makes a world of difference, having a soft surface. This corner with this hard, high density foam is just brutal, you know what I mean? So I have some NRS foam laying around, but I don't want to use any expensive materials until I'm kind of flushing out a design. But even just like right here, jamming my foot in and then having it brace up against something. This is kind of the most important part of R1, forward facing foot. And then the more angle you can get this, what happens is your hip allows you to, hit a flat spot in here. And so this is an experimental design where I don't have any platform over here. But what I do have is potentially, even just like here, this feels way better. Like I almost feel like I'm in a chair on this flat surface. And obviously I could even raise it up a little bit. And so that's kind of what we have, is we have kind of like a fluted side. So when we do drop it onto edge, even like right here, this is two dropped onto edge, where if I am in this position, now I want it to be flat. And so that's kind of what I need to be experimenting with even tonight, is just like, hey, we'll drop this down and then, cardboard it out. And we can make it, stiff enough where if I sit on it, even if it's cardboard, it's not going to crush. So those are the kind of the things that I have to work on. Let's go to the other side. I just want to put this pillow like right here. Hell yeah. So if I got my feet into that position, yeah, this feels real good. Because that's the other thing I need to figure out. And I think I'm just about right. Like if I put my foot in right there, I think I'd get enough angle on this to where I don't think I'm going to run into this corner. And so even like right here, I feel pretty confident that I could even pad out that corner. And yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. So in this design, I am reaching more towards the middle of the boat when I'm over here and highly edging this boat. Now this boat has too much edge probably. I mean, this thing just really releases, but that's the skeleton. And obviously we can kind of pad out those positions. I guess just what I wanted to know was, if I do start to fiberglass this, is this corner going to get in the way? Is this just the first prototype? Could I obviously make another one? And the other thing, even if I did fiberglass this out and I realized, oh my God, like these are really sharp and I do need to come in here, well, then I just take an angle grinder and then just cut, even a chainsaw or whatever, but some sort of cutting tool, and just cut that profile out and then fiberglass more. You know what I mean? That might be easier than currently chopping this and then re-taping it. It doesn't seem like, I don't know. So we'll see what we do on that. All right, I think we're good here. Just kind of throwing some soft material in here kind of shows me what I want to do to, get these corners. Because from this, I do want that sloped, kind of almost rounded, just like, your thwarts are rounded. And then your side tube is more of a rounded profile. All right, hell yeah. All right, hell yeah. So this is 3-inch, mini cell foam. That's what it's called. And it makes sense to just keep it simple. I was working on like a 6-inch, undercut. And I think that's kind of ridiculous, where here, I can push into this surface just real nice with my ankle. And then I can even shape this up. But I can still get my foot under and then pry up. And I think that's going to be just fine, especially with the grippiness of this, is basically jam under and then be able to have that gripped out. And if you thought you were losing grip in whatever location, then you could glue in just a little bit more. But this is just one of those scenarios where less is more. And I've already found that if I am towards the back of this cockpit, I can reach both sides, with a wider grip. And I think being able to move around in a cockpit is really important. So, with that thing that I made, it was getting ridiculous. I was making that just to be like, hey, if that was the size of the cockpit, would it be okay? And sure, there is elements that would be all right, but I think I'm going to go back to the original kind of 21-inch depth, and just know that if I jump to this back, see, now I'm just sitting on the total back of the boat, that I can still reach for these corners. I think that's important, and then be able to scoot up. And then so this rear thwart is kind of what I'm most interested in, is like, I definitely want to be able to sit here, but I want to be able to put my feet here. So, just even this is a good experiment, being in the back of the boat and having these as runners. This is showing me that, hey, these runners can really go all the way to the back. And if I was able to have my feet, in these compartments, I was thinking you would want like a well right here, but now I'm thinking the opposite. Like, obviously you want a place for your leg, So I'm just going to sit back here and kind of just modulate where my legs are, controlling the boat, because I thought this would be the biggest improvement to R1. Hell yeah, looked like hell. But anyway, sitting in the back of the boat and then being able to aggressively get, just in your normal position. That's sensical. It's nonsensical to be like, oh yeah, in R1, we can't just go to the back, get all that advantage of doing stern squirts and cool stuff, and not just instantly go back to your normal position. And so, hell yeah. So this is, and sometimes it takes, like the other day's video was pretty ridiculous, and it just takes, simpler is better. And so that's what we have. And so I think tonight I'm going to be kind of focused on, if I do sit back here, I still need to sit here, but all I need is a well for my legs. And yeah, and this foam feels great. I knew it would, And so we have a couple options between this and then NRS kind of makes that cooler foam. It still doesn't, I don't think it saturates water. But this stuff is for sure rock solid, closed cell, perfectly grippy. Like you can take an impact as long as it's not too sharp. You could put your whole leg into that and it's not going to break. And that's the other thing is, like, you want good purchase, but then quick release. And so I think that 3 inches really gives it. And so I'm pretty excited about that. And then up front, I'll have maybe like a, like this. It'll be double. It'll be 2. So let me just experiment with that right now. Because I am used to having a 6-inch thwart where you're like that. So underneath my thwart, 6 inches is kind of what you need. And so, let me get balanced. And so, like, in the front right here, I just want to be able to just, throw my leg in and then have it dead stop up against something. And I can even have that be foam too, so it's kind of softer on the feet, so I can just really jam. But basically, jam in 6 inches, and then that's totally wedged. So that's going to be up against the front, but I think the side, it just makes sense to have this 3 inch. 3 inches plenty. We have a wide cockpit, and I'm feeling really good about this cockpit. The next thing that I need to figure out is I am going to, so yeah, the other thing, whether it's tonight or tomorrow, when I do lean on here, I need to start foaming this out so it's flat. Because right now I just feel awful. And so I think that'll be a really cool experience to be like, okay, I got the boat. And this is the extreme. Like, this is so much edge, but hey, you might want this much edge. I just want to sit flat. So that's going to be the other thing is like, and even just like right here, it's like, hey, this is a 3-inch wedge. Let's see. Let's try to get one sit bone on that and then one sit bone right there. Yeah, so basically when I sit over here, I want to feel like I'm in a flat seat, and then maybe even, like hooked in a little bit, have a little bump. And so you're just like, oh, hell yeah, I'm flat, and then I'm kind of locked in. Those are the places, especially in this 3/4 location, that's what I'm after. So this is kind of the rocker we have. All right, hell yeah. All right, hell yeah. So far, so good. And we have this as kind of like a pedestal. And so we'll definitely make that completely rigid because I definitely want to sit on it. And, just to show you, it's exactly kind of what I wanted. It might be just a bit bigger than I want it, just because, what I mean? Right here, this could be 3 inches of foam. You know what I mean? Basically, every surface that I'm actually touching, if this was fiberglass, could probably be 3 inches of foam. So it is kind of interesting that if I do, I think that's what I'm going to learn from this. It's just like, if I find a design that I want, the final profile would be 3. So that, like this corner, if I wanted a sharp corner, cool, but it should be this Minicell foam, and then underneath maybe like a fiberglass. So fiberglass and then glued on foam for this. So right here, obviously, like this needs to be a lot softer instead of rigid, so I wouldn't want to fiberglass this anyway. But hell yeah, but we're thinking about actually dropping in. So this whole thing can just be Minicell foam once I figure out the right dimensions. You know what I mean? So this whole cockpit, especially with this foam, connected to whatever's here. And so let's get this out of the way. So right now I'm definitely digging this 3 inches of foam. That was not my butt. Anyway, digging this 3 inches of foam so I can, jam my feet in sideways. I think this is going to be a really good. And I'm looking forward to this, even just modifying the Armor Fat Cat with this. Taking this foam and then gluing it along the seam. And I bet you, this comes in 12-inch lengths. And if all you need is 3 inches, I could definitely just chop it down and then, throw it in. Just make one strip for 3 inches. And then so just all around that paddle cat, be able to do this with my feet. And then even up front, do the same thing. Okay, hell yeah. And then so I have these cutaways, and I got even this, so that's looking good. So let's take a step back. All right, so we're going to have this 3 inches, and, at some point this can taper away, but probably not, because, I don't know, I'll probably have to sit back in there and see. But then this would be foam all the way up to there, and then the pedestal foam. Hell yeah. So I think we're looking good on that. And so even right now, I don't know if I have enough of that, but yeah, so I have potentially enough pink foam that I could take this shape and fill it with foam. So that's actually a really good idea. Then I'd just be one and done, and I could friggin' sit on that, and that would be pretty sweet. So hell yeah. So let's sit back in here again. So and then just have foam runners right there. And so I could do that. That could be the next step. Fill that with foam, and then make these foam shapes. I could glue it together if I wanted. I'm not really interested in doing those foam shapes. Like, obviously, that's obvious. I just need a pedestal to where if I do sit on this, I can kind of gauge. Because the next thing I want to do is, like, when I lean over to one side, I need to figure out how level I want this. Now, this has an extreme amount of rocker. It's probably too much. Yeah, because it's kind of just throwing me out. All right, that got clipped off. So I definitely wanted to show I was kind of doing this for myself. If this 3-inch comes right flush with this, I can still have a pocket for my heel and get my toes underneath there. And then so this triangle can be filled in or whatever. So that's where that can taper. But definitely I want this 3-inch lip all the way to this pedestal, kind of on both sides. And it would I'll have the 3-inch gap all the way underneath even that triangle. It'll just taper. So hell yeah. So if I am in the back position, I'll be able to still hook my feet and then be able to dive forward and then just get back into this normal seated position. All right, hell yeah. All right, first piece, booyah. All right, this is so cool. So that's like filled with foam. It's like perfectly dense. Makes a nice little pedestal. Hell yeah. All right, hell yeah. So let's sit on this. This is sweet. All right, let's see, did you see this? Yeah, so we finally have like a pedestal in the middle, which is super important. And, the transition over is pretty bad, but I think I could get used to it. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where if this is the trade-off, like sitting all the way back here, being able to, and that's pretty sweet. And this is what you can do with a pivoted boat, because if you are back here and you just shift, now you're in, these positions where you can kind of do anything. Now there's the 3/4, there's the sideways. And so this sideways tilt is about as much as I'd want. This 3/4 is a little bit wild. But so is the back. I mean, this back is pretty, so that's kind of interesting. And let's roll to the 3/4 and then to there. The only thing that I've lost is the pivot up front. I've lost this, and so before I fiberglass, I would really put foam underneath the boat and make this a pivot. So this would be your neutral, and then right here you would pivot onto this surface. Okay, hell yeah. But this pedestal is looking real good. Yeah, the transition over on this side is a lot better. Hell yeah. But just from here to here, I just need to elevate this. So if this is kind of my final elevation, I need to get this same elevation. All right, booyah. All right, hell yeah. This might conclude this day because I definitely got to clean up. You know what I mean? Just get this place back in order. But hell yeah, I think we're looking good. And so the next thing is to foam or just use any sort of material. The foam is expensive as hell. And you know what I mean? But I just need to get this cockpit. So definitely flush across, leave this vacancy. But I need that to be flush and then ramped up, and carved out, just so, and that's definitely what I need to spend my time on. And it would be worthwhile to use, the foam, like I'm done with this. Like this was an experiment and I'm glad, sometimes you got to do that. You got to throw something at it and be like, no, that was dumb. And then we just realized that, yeah, this perimeter with this 3-inch, and this is 3-inch thick, and they come in, I think they come in a lot of different thicknesses, but this is the 3-inch thick by, you get it in 1 foot widths, and then this was probably 2 feet long. All right, so hell yeah. But hell yeah, so I need to figure out what kind of cockpit, using cardboard or whatever. Like right now, weight doesn't matter because I'll probably take it all off anyway. But this pedestal, that was a good thing to really flush out. And everything's real simple up here, you know what I mean? Because if I am just going to put this Minicell foam, here is my 6-inch mark. And then so here is where this would start, so that would just be like that. So that's very simple. It just needs a rigid attachment. So that's something where, like, yeah, I can put in, kind of fiberglass in something where then you slot in the foam or something like that. Anyway, yeah, it just needs to be attached some way, and it can be attached on the sides as well as, something right there. But that kind of gives you the full profile of like, hey, if this is going to be right there, then the nose of the boat can be kind of foamed out from there. And so this would be still a place where you could climb in. And there's, a part of me was just like, well, this is useful because it's a rigid beam, and then I can also put fabric across. But at some point, that's about as much as you would want. Where if you started putting more fabric across there, you could actually kind of get captured in there. So, but hell yeah. And then the other idea is that you would fabric from there all the way up. You know what I mean? And so you would actually have kind of a steeper profile. But I think this is useful because you don't want, I think you do want, like if this is going to plug, then that's useful because then it's going to absorb all the water. You're going to capture all that water and you're going to actually sub and go through a wave. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of a interesting thing to see how that would actually work out. Like you want this to be high and dry. You want to be able to skip through because this is like this width is kind of like it's like a wide kayak for sure. This width is wider than, but this is 30 inches. You know what I mean? So we're actually pretty close in this width to like a creek boat. Creek boats are kind of pushing maybe 27, or all boats like 25. Who knows? But we're pretty close there. But just this profile. So this profile could actually change to just a creek boat up there. Yeah, so that is kind of fascinating, and that would make sense. I mean, something where, but you could also have, and then, mine was actually just working on a play boat. I wanted the scoop because I wanted to test to see if you could do enders. But obviously, yeah, you could have the creek boat up there. But the creek boat up there, you can test that just by putting that underneath the Fat Cat. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of, I'll have to revisit that test and maybe even, figure out a way to completely seal off the Piranha Burn. And okay, so hell yeah. So we're done with tonight. Thanks for joining me. Booyah.